Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. Today has been an epically drama-filled Belgian Grand Prix. I thought we were done. It's not done. I was going to actually start the pod with something like this.
Just remember, every single Sunday
like the
morning
drama from last week, the chaos, but it has been usurped by this week again.
Yeah, I don't know. What do we do? Do we review the race as if it unfolded as we thought it unfolded, and then hit the drama? I guess we can't unknow what we know. So
I don't know.
We'll get into the race shortly. Before we get there, news and social. The video vault of which I actually found one this week, which I'm very proud of myself.
It was a good one too. I found it on my own and then saw there was a comment on it from the Dirty Side. I'm like, did I do that? Did I see this already? Oh no, it was Rob.
Video vault. Then we will untap bar if we can.
It was wild.
And then it feels like we need to go into a summer break, but we won't. We'll sort something out for next week.
Always.
But there'll be no race preview because we're going to be done for the summer now, so which is a little sad. But wow, did it leave us wanting more? But anyway,
yes.
Before we get there, let's go on to the news and social. Let's be a little self-indulgent with the first piece of news that we have.
Big news. This is big news.
This is big, actually. It is big for us. I know some podcasts out there probably have these download numbers in a single week. But for us, when we first started this pokey little pod and we were happy at, we've got 25 people listen this week. And then it kind of grew to 50. When you start
with zero, you have to go somewhere.
Exactly. And so we've kind of kept an eye on the numbers, but never really got too worried about it because it's just a hobby. But yeah, we got an email through from Buzzsprout, which is the platform we host it on. And we got the congratulation on 25,000 podcast downloads.
Amazing. And that's just on podcast platforms. We actually are getting a little traction occasionally on YouTube. So
YouTube
shout out to all
up.
you on YouTube right now checking this out. Thank you. I would say two things. First off, thank you to everybody who's tuned in. We always appreciate it. And if there are things you think we can do better, feel free to let us know. We're just two guys, two bozos who enjoy F1 and enjoy talking about it. So please let us know. And if you do enjoy it, please tell a friend.
I was going to say that, Brian, because as much as we both try to kind of keep our social media presence going, you know, you with Twitter, me with Threads and Instagram, it's like actually the biggest powerful tool out there is word of mouth.
100%.
Most people I speak to that found the pod were told about it by somebody else. So thank you so much. And please tell a friend. In fact, they don't even need to be a friend. Just stop someone at the bus stop and just tell them about it. I do need to give a shout out to Alad from back in Wales, who listens to us every week. Doesn't even like F1, just like the banter between the two of us.
Really?
So you don't even need to be an F1 fan. Come on in, the water's lovely.
And I have some other big news, but I'm going to hold it for the end of the news section. Rob doesn't even know what this is. And it's actually going to be, Rob, you should be nervous for the next few minutes because it is big news.
Oh, okay. Ooh.
Everyone has to be, now everyone is excited. All 25,000 listeners are, wait, that wasn't in a week? Okay.
No, that wasn't a week, Brian.
Oh, darn.
What else do we have? Benotto is back. He's going to be coming into Audi. So Sauber CEO Andreas Seidel and Oliver Hoffmann, previously chairman of the board, have left the project. Does that mean they were fired? Or is this mutual consent stuff? I mean, left the project just feels like...
Yeah, goodbye.
Goodbye.
If they had someone lined up that quickly, they fired them. Like, you don't let people go unless you have someone lined up. They didn't just quit and they go, oh, you know what? We'll just hire Mattia.
I just walked in one morning and went, guys, I think it's about time we left the project.
Right. And then Mattia just showed up randomly and they announced it to, So Mattia will be the chief operating and chief technical officer at Sauber Motorsport AG. Of course, this drove the internet crazy because they have Hulk signed. But have they signed the other driver yet? I don't think so. So then the question becomes, who is the other Sauber driver next year and then the Audi driver after that? And obviously, Mattia was there when they signed Carlos. But of course, he was there also with at McLaren with Andreas Seidel. So who knows what's what? The tea leaves are interesting. But speaking of them, we did get some driver news this week.
Yes, we did.
Well,
then you
like
can't
to
just
hit
tee it up like that and not tell us about it, Brian. Come on, tell me.
All right, fine. It's Esteban de Haas. Esti Besti going to Haas. They sent out a tweet. We're welcoming Esteban Ocon to the team. It's a multi-year contract, and it's the first Grand Prix race winner to drive for the team since our debut in 2016. It also reminds me of some audio I had gone and found this week, which turned out to be very prescient, because here is the audio that I loved from Esteban from a year ago in Mexico.
I can say to Haas that I'm going to go for it, so better be ready.
It was Haas, so he says, say to Haas, I'm going to go for it, so better be ready. That's him. So SD Bestie going to Haas.
And that was the one that he never actually put the move
Correct.
on, right?
He never
told
got
Haas
there.
to be ready and then never got close.
Can we do it one more time, because I kind of cut off the front. Here it is.
You can say to Haas that I'm going to go for it, so better be ready.
I love that.
They spent all race getting ready for something that never happened. Poor old Haas.
So they signed him.
Yeah. I mean, on that one, I don't know. I'm always, let people have a second or third chance or whatever it is. But everybody that's an Oliver Behrman fan is like, oh my gosh, he's going to come in and destroy Ollie. He's not going to be a good teammate. He's not going to be a mentor. Yeah. He's not going to be any of the sort of stuff that Ollie needs. But who knows? Different team environment. Maybe we'll see a different Ocon. Give him a chance.
Obviously, a lot happening at Alpine. Pierre stays. And this was also recorded when Esteban announced his team. And that's a little hard to hear because that's when he yells "Ciao." If you remember when he passed Esteban a couple races ago, but there's a lot of engine noise in the background, so I may have to go find a better version of that. But
I think you would,
Pierre
because that was just noise.
"Ciao."
Max has been told to put an end to his late night sim races.
Or has he?
God, I don't know. It's such a nothing burger of a story, really. It's like, geez, just because he was a little bit feisty on the radio last week, they're going, oh, well, he's tired, he needs his sleep. Like he's some kind of like toddler that needs to have a rest. I mean, give it a rest. Let's just move on from this, because that's just a nothing. I put it in here, story, but it's just, it is a dumb story.
Yeah.
You may have seen on social media, I had a little bit of fun with our logo and draped it in Deadpool and Wolverine, because they're everywhere this week. Ryan Reynolds is just a marketing machine, I think, and they did a livery for the Alpine. I was a little bit disappointed in it, if I'm honest. I think with the colour scheme that they had at their disposal with the red, the black, and the yellow, it could have been a lot better. I also thought there was a huge missed opportunity not to make the race suits a bit more Deadpool and Wolverine, like have one of them in the red and black outfit, one of them in the yellow. Yeah. That would have been fantastic. I think all they had was it red? With like the Wolverine slashes on the top of the thigh or something. They little bit of a missed opportunity there, I think.
But I will say,
I had fun doing our logo, so I don't care.
Yeah, you did a great job on the logo. Those guys were everywhere. Deadpool and Wolverine, like the two of them, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, were everywhere, all over YouTube. Every friggin' thing I watched was filled with those two guys, from like the Hot Ones challenges.
I'm going to see that tonight, so there we go.
I mean, I'm like, guys, enough already. I can't. I'm on overload. I've seen Deadpool, but I've not seen the other Wolverine items. So anyway. McLaren, a couple notes on McLaren. One, they signed a multi-year deal with MasterCard, which is great, not to be outdone by the Visa Cash App RB. MasterCard had to get their name on a team, and it was McLaren, which was a great team to get it on. And, listener, Dirty Cider, and Discord member Andy made it to the McLaren Technical Center yesterday, and he had a great picture of himself sitting on the tire of Lewis's championship-winning car. He got to touch the car, check it out. He tried turning the steering wheel. Andy's a great guy and a great fantasy player, but also just a good dude overall. And that was really cool to see. So kudos to you, Andy, for getting that tour of the MTC.
Good things for me, bad things. F1 have rejected the point system change, and they're going to keep it as the top 10. They had been sort of suggesting they were going to change. I think it's towards the end where the points drop off 5. What does it go? There was enough room where they could not change the top 5 positions, I think, and then change it to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and take it down to, say, however far down they were going to go. And we were talking about it, that we'd like to see it go all the way down to 20th. Just find a way of making every position count. But they rejected it out of hand and just said, nah, we'll keep it as a top 10, thanks. So not going to get our wish there.
If I'm being honest, I was kind of excited for more teams to get points and make those positions matter a little more, a little better racing at the back. Just a little more impact for those moves, but I don't know. I mean, I kind of get it and kind of don't. It's one of those where I'll take it as it is and move on. I'm not going to...
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, when we were kind of growing up watching this sport, what was it, top 8? So, I mean, it's top 10 now at least, so maybe one day they'll nudge it a little bit further. Who knows? In 2026, we're going to have 9 days of testing, they announced. So in the same document that they announced that we would be keeping the 10 positions for points, they also talked about the testing period. So they're obviously expecting teams to have issues with the new regs. So they've gone, let's just triple the testing that we had 3 days this year. We'll have 9 in anticipation of the 2026 season.
That's a good point. You put it that way. That's smart. I thought of it as we're going to have 24 races and now 3 times as much testing. And if I'm working for one of the teams, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. We're moving it earlier up front and it's going longer at the back end. This is becoming like insane.
Yeah, true. But I mean, I can see why they do it. They don't want they can't risk the spectacle of the sport falling flat in the first race because every single car just breaks down because they messed the regs up. So...
Or like the porpoising situation, which no one saw coming.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I don't have to go get more sound effects.
And I think coming almost to the end here, I kind of took this one from Terry, F1 Coffee Corner. So Bruno Famin stepping down as the head of Alpine at the end of August, and Terry put this great little piece out there that said, look, this has got all the hallmarks of Alpine getting ready to be sold. Briatore hasn't come in as a consultant. He's come in to asset strip and knows how to break this thing up to make it easier to sell. So they got rid of the kind of being an engine manufacturer and taking the Renault engine. They've done a deal with Mercedes. That makes it more attractive to be sold to someone on. Becomes a standalone team rather than in bed with the Renault engine. The Alpine brand can then be sold off independent of the F1 team. And Renault can maybe go and recoup some of the money that they wazzed down the toilet on the engine development. So it all makes sense. And then the other rumour that I didn't put on here that's swirling is obviously maybe that's GM and Andretti that come in and obviously buy this team as their way onto the grid.
Well, they are apparently going to be for sale. And regardless of the reason why, whether it is for sale or not, whether it's for any other reason, it'll be the 5th team boss at Enstone in the last 5 years, because you can start with Cyril Abiteboul, then you had Budkowski, Otmar, Bruno, and then whomever fills in 5th, as we've seen the rumors are Oliver Oakes, we'll find out. But that'd be 5 team principals in 5 years. That does not speak well for stability and building a plan.
No.
And, you let Otmar get 50 races into his 100-race plan and you sack him. And I think that was the beginning of the end, if I'm being honest. We had a question from a Dirty Sider, and it's a good one. And we're going to give it a shot at getting this right. And in the notes, I used the F word a lot because I know we won't get it right. We're going to have a problem. The question is from Dirty Sider Darren. Can you explain why the undercut is so big at some races and doesn't seem to be a factor at others? Does it have to do with the fact, and this is the example from Hungary, that Hungary has so many corners and the tires play a bigger role in the corners? Rob, do you want to give a shot at screwing this up first, or shall I?
Well, I'm going to screw it up if the internet screwed it up, because I just Googled this to see what the answer was.
I was going to give my own answer, but you go first with the official internet answer.
It's the official internet answer was to do with many, many, many factors play a part, but the main deciding factor is to do with tire degradation rate.
Yes.
So the difference
That's
between
what I was gonna say, tire deg.
Yeah. So if the tire deg out on track is high, coupled with a fairly short in and out pit window. So if you're at one of these pit stops that take like 30 seconds to be in and out, it's not going to be as strong as somewhere where you're in and out in 22 or something, because you'll be in and out on fresh rubber. The tire offset between you on fresh and the guy that's pootling around on broken tires is going to be huge. The other thing as well that I found was they said a lot of people would think that Spa would have a huge undercut because it's so long, and therefore the guy out on the old tires has to do a huge in-lap, and the guy on the fresh rubber has a huge opportunity to close in. They said, actually, somewhere like Hungary, where it's all tighter packed in, raises the chances of you being in traffic and in dirty air and all this kind of stuff. And if you judge your pit stop right and you can come out into a fresh window, that can make the undercut even more powerful, which is why it's so powerful in Hungary. You've got high deg, small pit window, and it's very short track, so the other guy's probably going to be in traffic or in other people's dirty air. That's what I found.
I think that's actually really good. I was going to also start with tire degradation. So, Darren, I hope Rob's answer was good. I'm now going to go to the zoo trying to add anything to it. And I think the tire deg is the big part, right? So, to Rob's point, if there's a big offset in lap time, so that when you're your first lap on the fresh tires, you're a second or two faster than the person on their last lap of their old tires. That's a big difference. So let's start there. Is the tire degradation and the ability of the lap times. Go ahead, Rob. Really is trying to get in here. Either that or
no, I just remembered one. Just as you were talking, I just remember one of the things. And the other thing that really makes the offset
I just remembered something, so I'm gonna cut you off. Here we go.
Yes. Only because you made such a good point. It reminded me of another point, you see. So this is all you, Brian. The tire deg on the car coming in is high, but also it's the track surface
Thank
and
you.
the
I was going
ability
there.
of the other car coming out to light their tires up quickly. Because if the ability to bring your new tires up to temperature isn't very good, then actually you don't make as much of your outlap as you could do on a track where you can actually light the tires up real quickly and take advantage of the fresh rubber. I'm done. I'm backing away from
No, I
this
love it
conversation
because
now.
also when you see races where it's cooler out and it doesn't have, like, the surface is less abrasive, you're probably going to see less of an undercut risk because there's going to be less delta between the outgoing tires and the new tires. So that if someone waits an extra lap, they may only lose a couple tenths or something.
Yep.
So it becomes a pit stop timing difference as opposed to just the big difference in the tires. So Darren, hope we got that for you, buddy. And if that didn't work, send your complaints to Rob's Internet. But the last piece of news is the big news that I hope you've all been waiting for, that Rob is very confused about, and it starts with some music. I did something amazing this week. Now, let me be clear. This is an opportunity for you, not a gift. I got tickets to Canada. I made it through yes, I got 2 seats to Canada next year. I was literally sitting in a meeting. This is a true story, so anyone listening from work, I'm sorry. But I turned over and the Canada thing started running and I got in. I was one of the lucky people who got in. I got I have 2 seats. It's $610 for 3. It's more than the $480 from 2 years ago. It's $610 now, so think about it. But I got us the same grandstand, which I could only get. I tried the Lance Stroll. I tried some of the top ones. I got denied. The seats are not quite as good as the last ones. They're lower down. So maybe some people view that as better. I viewed it slightly worse because we're pretty low down. I think we might be in the second row, which is
we're near the
awesome.
front. We can smell the tires. I mean, come on.
Smell the tires. We can push the cars. So
if anybody wants to sponsor the Dirty Side to get there, we've now got to raise a few more dollars to get there.
Well,
so,
and not only that,
sponsorship here.
If we are in the second row, and I'm not sure, this means we can easily attach the flag to the post in the seat in front of us. I know, right? Seriously, we could get a Dirty Side flag hanging off the thing. Anyway, grandstand 1, row BB. I won't go into any more specifics, but I got 2. And so we can talk after the recording is done. But I've been sitting on this, like dying to tell you that this happened. And I don't know your schedule. It's over for Father's Day again. I don't know with the school and college and kids, and we'll figure it out. But just know your boy Sap went online and got 2 tickets to Canada on a whim.
Nice one. I mean, all I can say to that is let's open up the video vault. No, it's amazing. Yeah, we'll definitely talk after we finish recording.
I'm so excited. You don't understand. I'm so excited. Okay, let's open the video vault. Oh, Canada, here we come. That's it. I got nothing. Let's close the video. I'll talk more about Canada. Just kidding. Okay. So I found 2 videos kind of late this week that I thought were eclectic and fun and fantastic, and I started putting the notes in, and as I said, I watched one of them, and I saw it. I'll actually let Rob introduce it because he's such a novice to the video vault, such a visitor inside the vault. But as I'm watching this first video, I'm watching it on my TV, and I click over to the comment section. You can only do so much on your remote. And I scroll down, and I'm laughing because I thought this video was funny. And then I see one, as I was said, from the Dirty Side. I'm like, what? Huh? I'm like, did I do
one
this
of the first comment? One of the first comments in there actually as well.
And it had a lot of likes, and then I realized you had seen it, and then I saw it in the video vault. So, Rob, why don't you tell people about this banger?
I don't even know what it is. It's 6.5 minutes. Danny Ricciardo and Josh Allen, the legend of Rick Allen, and I mean, it's a bizarre story about these 2 buying a racehorse, which is an awful racehorse. It doesn't do well at all, but it's just a bromance racehorse, 6.5 minute weirdness, also genius. I don't know. All I could say is I would watch the full-length movie of this.
I thought it was hilarious. I loved it. Josh Allen, I didn't realize had such a dry sense of humor as well, but he and Danny Rick were great. And like you say, 6.5 minutes of question? Like, what was
it? What have I just watched?
Yeah. It was definitely
Mark Schofield, that came on the pod, actually posted that he's got merch from this now. He's got a Rick Allen t-shirt. Yes, he's got a Rick Allen t-shirt, and I can't remember what else, maybe a cap, something else. I'm like, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Rick Allen, by the way, not really a spoiler, but Rick Allen is the name of their horse. Yeah, just watch it. It's just bizarre.
It is. The second thing that was also a little eclectic, and apparently I'd missed this for Hungary, was Track Tours with Valtteri. Valtteri Bottas' Ultimate Track Guide for Spa-Francorchamps. It's on the Sauber channel. And you may say, Brian, why would I watch this now? The race is over. Because you have to. You have to go. This is a must-watch. It's 7 minutes long of Valtteri riding his bike around Spa, giving play-by-play, giving a feel for the track. And the camera angle is what you would expect it to be, horrendous and great at the same time. I'll just say, long arm Valtteri cannot hurt you. You will be okay.
I don't know. That featured in my nightmares. That fisheye lens or whatever it is did some really weird things to Valtteri while he's cycling around. My favorite part of the entire video, not really a spoiler, so I'm just going to do it anyway, is when he makes with his mouth, he makes the noises of the DRS flap opening, and then him accelerating through DRS is just...
No, my favorite part,
I feel in a way
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go on. You give your
the back straight before the bus stop chicane, he starts singing, all by myself, because he was describing how often you're kind of by yourself at that point. And I'm thinking to myself, you know who this is? This is
Valtteri Bottas, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
I love that video.
So do I. I just every time he's becoming more and more of a almost celebrity of the grid than a driver now, which is a bit sad to see because he's not in a car that can do anything.
Yeah.
So he's everywhere pre-race. I mean, some of the stuff that he's coming up with is absolutely hilarious. But part of me wishes that he had such a good car and was so focused on delivering points that he didn't have time for doing any of these shenanigans. But I think he's just playing with the hand he's been dealt this year. I just so hope he gets to a car next year where he can get back up into the points. But
couple other ones quickly. The 2024 Belgian Grand Prix preview with Pierre Gasly on the Alpine channel. 2 minutes. It was fun. It was fun to have him kind of drive it and talk about it. They've been flip-flopping these as well. And I enjoyed Pierre's take of it. And then the last one I have, just because I gotta mention this. First drive of my F1 hypercar AMG 1 track day from Nico Rosberg on the Nico Rosberg channel. For anyone who doesn't know, Nico Rosberg, 2016 world champion, drove for Mercedes, was on the grid for years. Nearly 20 minutes long. I'm not telling you to go watch it. I'm not, unless you really want to. I'm just saying I watched it because I do my due diligence. And he gets the AMG 1. And as a AMG guy, I've watched the Project 1 become the 1. And it's basically an F1 engine in a road car. And so they're finally getting them to customers. And Nico has one, 4 years later. But it's so fast and loud that he keeps doing this thing. And Rob, I'm going to need your description of what this is for people who can't see us and no one can see us. So here it is. He puts his hand next to his head. He goes, woo, and he makes a face like something's hot and shakes his hand a lot. I don't know. Have you ever seen someone do that? It's really good, really cool.
He
kept doing it over and over again. And I actually wanted to call him, as Max Verstappen calls him, Brittany. But I didn't. And with that, we're going to close the video vault. Oh, and so we're up to the race weekend that was.
But without the noise of closing the video vault.
Oh, apparently I stopped sharing that. I will fix that. I had a little audio problem over here. So imagine it goes, bang, closed.
Okay, so then race weekend came around, and I mean, Paul is always beaten up on practice, and we always try to make the most of practice, but gotta be honest, practice really wasn't that great this time around. We had FP1. I wrote 3 things here. Max was fast. Ocon was dead last, not Deadpool. And not much else. That was my FP1 summary. FP2 was McLaren 1-2 now, and Ferrari's back, ? And FP3 was water, wet, rain, water, Stroll crashed in the wet because it was wet. And giving us all zero opportunity to read anything into the tea leaves as to what might happen on the Sunday, because we all knew Sunday was going to be dry, and FP3, which is normally where we get to see the real kind of pace come about, was a complete washout. So there were kind of 3 sessions where not a lot happened. I felt so sorry for the people in the grandstands for FP3 because I think we had about 4 cars went out.
Was that what it was?
It just rained the entire time, and then Stroll crashed trying to go out. And
Stroll's supposed to be good in the wet too. That's one of the things people often say about Lance. Didn't he take pole once in Turkey? I want to say Istanbul Park or something. Where I'm making that up.
Why not?
Sure, in the wet. I made the whole thing up. But then we get to quali, and this is where I was able to tune in. I thought I tried to watch practice. I love Spa, and so I'd missed it all. And then we get to quali, and Joe goes out, Logan, Yuki, K-Mag, and Nico. We lost all those 5. So there were people flirting with the drop zone. Checo was flirting with it for a little, and you're thinking, don't do it again, Checo. Don't do it again. and he did not, thankfully. But it was getting close. But again, I don't think you'd be super surprised by those drivers going out in Q1.
The Hasses maybe, but although it didn't really transpire to race day, there was a lot of chatter about who will have been set up for dry conditions on race day. So did you not change your car at all and just sacrifice grid position because you wanted a dry setup even though you knew quali was going to be damp? Or did you lean into the wet conditions and try to maximize grid position knowing that you might not be as fast on the Sunday? That was kind of the story that was being told, but poor old Haas, that didn't really play out. But I think it did for some of the later ones we'll come to in a minute. So yeah, in Q2 we lost Stroll, Bottas, Danny Rick, Gasly and Albon. Albon was like just squeezed out right at the death. And I think at that one, I think Perez was in 10th at that point and just needed one of those three cars to go quicker than him, and he was going to be out. But...
I thought it was going to be Valtteri because he was coming around at the end, and I'm literally like Rick Allen. I'm sitting there like, come on, Valtteri, come on. Like I'm slapping the imaginary horse. Get that Sauber going. And it didn't happen. But he drove the wheels off that thing all weekend. We'll talk a little bit about how I got real excited when I realized he was in the points, and then I'd forgotten he'd only pitted once during the race. And then Max takes pole, right? We go to Q3. Max.
So this is where it looked so this is where Red Bull, who hadn't looked quick on P2, probably in hindsight, was our only one when we really saw dry pace, and the McLarens dominated, and Red Bull weren't as fast. So it looked like Red Bull had really leaned into a wet setup to try to maximise that we need Max to finish first because that means 11th once he takes his penalty. Right. And if Checo can get some grid position, maybe he can do master of defence and kind of help Max come through. So you saw McLarens weren't as quick. They were definitely set up for the dry race. They almost thought, well, we'll make hay while the sun shines in the dry race tomorrow. And then I thought Ferrari looked the same. They'd set up for a dry race up until the moment where Charles just comes out of absolutely nowhere. Because all of this was going to plan for Red Bull. They were first and second. Then you had Hamilton, Norris, Piastri, Russell, Sainz. So kind of the faster cars that you were expecting to be up the front were a little bit further back maybe, and definitely time-wise way off Max. And then Leclerc comes and drops one right in between the two Red Bulls, splits the Red Bulls. It was a phenomenal lap, really, because I think that car was set more up for a dry condition than wet. So
I think Charles basically did what he's done, not so much this year, but in years past, where he's Mr. Saturday. And you don't want that from a Ferrari driver. You want them to be Mr. Sunday. But if your car can't give you Mr. Sunday, maybe being Mr. Saturday is the best you're going to get. And so I was shocked to see Charles get there and end up starting first with Max's penalty. Checo second. I'm thinking, is this finally his time to not have a massive set of problems?
That's exactly what I'm just thinking, because everyone's talking about how Charles would be a little bit disappointed being second, because that will mean he'll get promoted to pole, which will put him on the side of the track that you don't want to be on, because historically, second place is the best place to be. You get a tow all the way down, and by the time you get to the end of the Kemmel Straight, you're leading. So it was like, oh, wow, this is all unfolding beautifully for Perez. All he's got to do is follow Charles into corner one. Don't even try to put a move on him. Follow him all the way down, breeze past him, and then slow down, slow everyone down enough for Max to come through. I mean, this was going to be a Red Bull masterstroke.
It was
until the race started.
Until Checo actually started driving the car. But we'll wait. So, yeah, the race starts, right? We get there Sunday. I'm so excited to watch the race. Rob and I were sending a lot of texts back and forth. Rob had predicted a first corner situation. You could feel it.
Carnage was the word I used. I honestly thought Checo wouldn't hold to that plan and would get far too excited and try to attack on the inside of the first corner, and then we would just get carnage.
And one thing that I did not know, because again, I missed all of the practices with work and other things, and I missed it during quali, apparently. But the DRS on the Kemmel Straight, as Rob Ray talked about after Eau Rouge and Raidillon, was shorter this year, shortened by 75 meters or something to that effect. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Maybe it'll make it a little harder to overtake those DRS overtakes. I want to put a pin in that, because at some point I'm going to make the argument that this was of all the spas I can remember in the last handful of years, this is the first time track position mattered as much as it did. We're going to talk about this at the end, but that factored in because now it was harder to overtake. So again, put a pin in the DRS.
I think they nailed the DRS.
I agree.
Actually, there were no kind of just breeze bys. So
I agree. So anyway, we get going, and as we said, there was not carnage. Checo fell a spot. In terms of crashes, there was changes.
Yeah,
around.
so Checo fell a spot. Who knows? My carnage might have been about to unfold because Checo aggressively moves over to go and basically try and take
Very
the inside
fast.
line. And just as he's violently going over to the right, it's like, oh, hello. And Lewis is right there. Lewis has just basically been like a rocket off the start line,
Yes,
has
right
absolutely
behind
nailed
Charles.
it.
Yes.
And he's right along. I don't even, when you watch the replay, how quickly Lewis got alongside Checo is insane. Because Checo comes violently across to take that inside. It's, oh, crap. There's a car there.
Well, and then they jig back left. And it was like, is this synchronized? Did they plan this? And how did they go so hard right and then so hard left? I mean, these guys have amazing reflexes. I will say this, that while that was happening, Lando was losing 3 spots. Max gained 3 in the
you've
first
been
lap.
a little harsh, I think, on Lando in our comments here.
Have I?
Because
How
he
many
had
times
to
has
react
he
to
lost spots
all
on the
those
first
cars
lap?
to the right of him all
I
hit
know.
him left.
Okay,
So what does he do? Stay where he is and crash? Or
Oh.
he goes left as well. And then he goes left and he ends up on the gravel, loses momentum and loses 2 spots. But what else does he do?
But I can go now? Okay. Here's the thing. How many times has Lando lost spots on the opening lap? And you can say
History's got nothing to do with what happened today.
Hold on. Can I finish talking?
No, you can't.
1 or 2 times, I agree. Bad luck, someone cuts you off, you have to get out of the way. 4 or 5 times, 3, 4 times, whatever it is now. It's at least 3, if not 4, of the handful of races where he started in the top 3. He's lost multiple spots on the first lap.
So what would you have done today instead then?
I don't know. Something. I'd have deployed the smoke screen so no one knew where I was. I don't know, but why is it always Lando? And why is he always running off the track? And why is he always losing 3 spots in the first handful of turns?
You see, I would say you're wrong there. Only on Lando's recent starts have been awful. So he's losing his spots where he's just not getting off the line quick enough. He's just, for whatever reason, he's just not engaging. When they talk about those phases of the starts, we're seeing Lando pull away like he's driving a tractor and everyone else is making those spots of him. So that, I completely agree with you that his starts have been rubbish recently. He wasn't rubbish today. He got away off the line really well, and then he became a victim of everybody to the right of him squeezing him off. I mean,
wasn't it China where he was run so far into the gravel he lost like 6 spots or something? I mean, like I got a list.
What did you do? Collide with a car?
I don't know. I'm just saying it's
exactly.
like how can you have such bad luck every start?
That's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, right?
That's no better explanation than the dirty sides. That's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
So then
anyway,
you got.
Yeah.
Then you've got Lewis in the prime spot to come down the Kemmel Straight and took the lead. And I'm like, what is going on? Because Mercedes haven't shown any pace at all this week.
Do you know I did not know the Kemmel Straight
from?
was so far uphill, and not as much uphill as it is, because Valtteri's bicycle ride showed that to me. So if you got to go watch Valtteri's bike ride.
He's having to stand up on the pedals there to get up that hill. It looks insanely steep.
Well, especially with the fisheye lens. Not only does it look insanely steep, it looks insane because it looks like Slender Man's coming after you with 10-foot-long arms. But
my gosh, don't.
And then we see Joe coasting. And at this point, I have my first inkling of massive fantasy problems because I have Joe on both my teams to afford the people I need. And I see him coasting. And then he gets the car restarted. I'm like, that's not a good thing. No one in the history of F1 has ever said, car's dead, car's dead. Oh, wait, hang on, I'll be fine. No, never. And you know what? Didn't work.
No. I think one of the commentators said, they did Control-Alt-Delete on his car and got him going again. But
just for a little bit.
And then we got a little bit where I got overexcited as a Ferrari fan because Sainz was right up George's trumpet, which I don't think he should have been, given that he was on the hards and everyone else in the world was on the medium. So I'm like, wow, Sainz has got some serious pace here. This is looking tasty. Then we had Piastri kind of coming right up behind Perez. Lewis talking about something moving between his legs. But it's okay because he'd managed to break the DRS of Charles. So we kind of, I think you wrote in the notes, we got like the top 8. We're all really, really close for a bit. But then by about 6, 7, 8 laps, they'd kind of all broken DRS from each other and they were kind of about 1.5 apart from each other. Yeah,
and even if some were in DRS, there was no real action occurring. And it wasn't bad. But it was tight. And they kept mentioning this. You could see like the top 10 were all within camera angle as they kind of came around corners. You had Lewis, Charles, Checo, Oscar, George, Carlos on the hards, Lando, and Max. And then the Lando-Max thing was fascinating, right? Because Max pit to undercut Lando on lap 11. And then it felt to me like Lando was behind Max, whether he was super close or not. the whole rest of the race. And Max couldn't pass anyone either. Basically, Checo pitted to get him out of the way, and then the two of them just basically were a tandem the rest of the way through.
Yeah.
And again, Lando had a bad, poorly timed, in my opinion, pit stop, came out 5 seconds, caught up to Max after a while, and then just was behind him the whole rest of the way. So it was, again, I'm not saying it was the greatest race I've ever seen, but it was a very good race. I didn't know who was going to win till the end. I love that. We'll get there. There was a lot of drama.
This was you've already jumped to the end here. We're on lap 12.
I'm just so excited. I'm so excited. We're on lap 12.
So sorry. Piastri came out behind George, but he basically quickly overtook him. And by this point, I think, was it everybody had pits apart from, like you say, Carlos was on the hards and Lando was on the mediums. And it looked like Lando was going to try to stretch this a bit to make a better tyre offset. But they didn't really keep it for that long. I mean, we wrote this at lap 13. It was like Lando's going to make this section go a lot longer, and by 15 he was in. But we'd also heard by that point Stroll having a little bit of a baby cry about the speed of his car. Which, by the way, if he hadn't come on team radio to mention that, Aston Martin were 100% in witness protection this week. And we've said this multiple times, didn't even realise Aston Martin were racing this weekend.
No, and I missed the chance to use Sebastian Vettel's sound for something between my legs. It's this one.
There's something loose between my legs.
So I know that's not Lewis, but I at this point, it was wild. Again, Lando waited 4 laps from when Max pitted. So 3, I guess, where they could have reacted. You're not building that big a tire offset in 3 laps. And what he did was come out 6 seconds behind Max. So he got undercut massively.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, though, he gobbled that up like he was back within
yes, he was.
Max's DRS within a handful of laps. So maybe the tire offset was there. But just like you said earlier, not quite enough to get that magic moment. Although we'll get there in a minute because we're kind of going ahead here. But so Sainz finally came in. George got past Checo, which there'd been a little bit of a thing developing here where you had Checo ahead of George, ahead of Max. Max couldn't get onto the back of George properly because George was hanging out in Checo's DRS. So every time Max went on the attack, George had it as well. And I saw George finally got past Checo, and I was like, oh, I wonder if this bizarrely will be the bad thing to happen to George, because Checo will let Max pass. Max will then gobble up George, and Max has now jumped 2 drivers. But it didn't actually happen. George pulled out 1.5 seconds, I think, from Checo, very quickly dropped him from DRS. Checo didn't get out of the way, actually held Max up for a bit until finally they pitted him and got him out of the way that way. But by that time, Max was well outside being able to get DRS on George.
And I, the eternal, but ending today, Checo optimist. I'm handing my card in officially. I'm no longer going to talk about how much I've loved him. I wrote in the notes, when Checo pits to release Max on 22, as the commentator said, it's early. We know it's early. They're 44 laps. This is the halfway point. You got to make some tires go the rest of the way. However, I'm thinking to myself, he's done with pit stops. I'm thinking this could be big. If Checo can kind of keep some track position when he gets back out here, he could be in front of a lot of people as other people drop to pit. This could be big. And you know what ended up happening? Double R-O-N-G. Wrong. W-R-O-N-G. Wrong. Okay. And then, anyway, sorry, Lando gets in Max's DRS at this point, and like you say, what'll happen? Will Max get George? Will it become a big thing? I'm thinking this could be juicy. And then I wrote back in the notes, or maybe not.
I mean, it was. It's just they never got wheel to wheel. I mean, Lando had a good couple of nibbles at him at the end of the Kemmel, and I think what prevented Lando being able to overtake Max, this is credit to Max. I think he deployed his battery when he needed to defend, but I think he could see Charles in the distance and was like, if I can just close up to Charles and hang out in Charles's DRS, probably haven't got the pace to go past him, but that's going to be enough to keep Lando at bay. And actually, as disappointed as I was to not see a Lando lunge on Max and see those two go wheel to wheel again, just sitting there and thinking, hang on, Spa last year, right. Max drove from France and caught everyone up and lapped them all and won by 1,000 years because that car was just so dominant. And here we are, where Max is doing everything in his ability and having to hang out in other people's DRS just to keep Lando behind him because he knows he's not going any further forward. I'm like, this is the catching up that we'd all wanted to see where everyone gets closer because this is brilliant.
Have we found out yet if they're thinking about bringing the RB19 back just straight away, as it were, at the end of the year last year? Because it was in the regs then. The regs ain't changed that much. So, no. At this point, I got the Cheetos out for a little breakfast, and I started taking less notes. Lewis pitted. He was still ahead of Charles. And now we start seeing the last round of pit stops for the leaders. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty interesting to me. On 29, Carlos and Max pit. 30 Lando pit, 31 Oscar pits. And first of all, two things to say. At this point, we know George had announced, let's go for a one-stopper. He announced it on the radio, and I am sitting there thinking, ooh, spicy, because we're starting to see, and again, we're starting to see high tire deg, less powerful DRS, which means track position is going to be important. And again, Rob and I were trading notes about this earlier in the week. This is normally a track where it's not. So, like, I thought Max would do his rocket ship move and, the blue shell from Mario Kart, and then he's first, right? Kind of the bullet, really, actually, because the blue shell knocks out. Anyway, you get my point. I was expecting that. We didn't get that. Hot tires, hot track, high tire deg, shorter DRS, and all of a sudden track position matters. And I'm sitting here watching this, and George goes, I'm going to go for the end. And I'm thinking, why didn't Carlos go for the end? Because he kind of started long, and he could have staggered his stops. I'm still thinking Checo may have something here.
Do you know why? Because somebody on the team radio at Ferrari went, don't go till the end because the car will be underweight if we do that.
Yeah, no safety cars. Well, we'll get to that.
So you're right. So we had, and when Piastri pits, he comes in and almost like takes his jackman out, who just basically flexes his muscles and leans back into the car. It's like a superhero moment where they were like,
he did.
They were talking about in the commentary, they're like, he's actually really helped stop the car there because he kind of leaned back in and earned his paycheck today.
They did have to give him a check over after that, and he seemed to be okay. I hope he's okay. That would look kind of nasty in slow motion.
But what that did was that coming out of these final pit stops, we had now Norris was behind Checo, and Max was ahead, and it was like, so Checo now can do Ministry of Defence and hold Lando up to prevent this charge from Lando coming after Max. Or he can't, and Norris just breezed by Checo within about a lap.
Breezed by. Wasn't even close.
Now you had this offset where Max was on mediums until the end, and Lando was on fresh hards. So it's like, can Max drive at a pace to stay ahead of Lando, but not take too much out of his tyres? Because we pretty much know Lando's are going to last better than Max's. And like you say, from here on, they just hung out. Lando, I think, was about 0.4 seconds behind Max for the rest of the race.
The rest.
That was it. It was just never. I don't think we ever saw a move. We never saw it. At the end of the Kemmel, he would always come on the inside and sort of like wave at his rearview mirrors and go, but never really went for it. What we did have was we had then Oscar kind of showing Lando how to do it. The overtake he put on Charles
was great at the end of the Kemmel straight.
Oh. Went around the outside of him and then took the inside of the next corner, and I honestly thought they were going to collide. I mean, that's fair play to Charles he had to just acknowledge he'd lost a spot and he had to back out of that then.
He did, and you know what? They highlighted the fact that it had been going on for a lap or two, where Oscar had been kind of testing him there and couldn't get it done, couldn't get it done. But it was fair, tight, close racing from both of them. It was awesome to watch, and Oscar was looking very fast. He had, as he said, and I actually read into this differently. He said, as you know, clean air is king. Everyone's talking about how excited he was when he was released during this race. I'm thinking back, it was the Hungary race, and he's explaining why he couldn't catch Lando. But that's just me thinking of the drama from last week. Oh, and anyway, sorry, at this point, I just got to give one more other note. Lap 34, I'm watching Valtteri in the points at 10th, and I'm literally screaming at the TV, come on, Valtteri! Again, like I'm doing the thing with the horse, let's kind of, as I was doing in Q2. And no, I forgot he hadn't pitted a second time. So all of a sudden, I go down for more Cheetos, and I come up, and he's 17th. I'm like, oh, and the profanity that came out of my mouth.
And you got me all caught up in this as well, because I'm like, shh, don't mention it. You'll speak it into existence if he's not going to do it. And then I kind of looked and thought, hang on a minute. And then in it came with a little pit icon next to it. I was like, oh, man.
I let my optimism get inside of my intellect, and I screwed all that up. But anyway, now by lap 36, 37, 38, there are 6 laps left. And any one of the top 3 could honestly win, because we have George doing what he can to hold on to those hard tires that are 30 some odd or almost 30 laps old. We have Lewis catching him in a rate of knots. Team orders, question mark, what will we do? Will they be allowed to battle? And then we have the even faster Oscar Piastri and the McLaren catching Lewis. And AWS, I'm sure, had a power outage as they were trying to compute who's going to catch whom at what time where. It was like all setting up for like a lap 43 collision of the three cars. And I couldn't have been closer to my screen because right behind them we had Charles in fourth, Max right behind him, and Lando right behind him. We had two groups of three, and they were close to the first group by a couple seconds. So it's just like you're watching this like if anything goes wrong with the two Mercedes getting near each other, Oscar will surely snack that up. But then Charles is only a second or two behind them, and Max, like, no idea what the podium's going to be at this point.
I don't know that we've seen a race for a while where the top six have been so close to each other coming over the line. I mean, maybe we have. It just felt so tense and close today.
So good.
It was amazing. Now, the only thing, so we wrote here that, well, first, before we get into the final chasing, I think you wrote this. I wrote the note, Sainz gets Checo on lap 39. And you wrote, Checo started second, now eighth.
WTF. And I don't mean WTF1. Wow. How do you start second on the grid, have no problems that we're aware of with the car, have no pit stop issues? Yes, your second stop was a little early to get you out of the way, Max. Okay, fine. So you left some tread on those tires. But eighth, bro. You are the last of the top four teams. You started second. Eighth. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know.
We'll get into a Checo stat here later in the SAP stats, but he's my pits. But
don't ruin that. Come on.
Why? I've done it. He's been my pits for like 8 times in a row. It should be the honorary Checo is the pits, according to Brian Pitts.
Anyway. So then we had Lewis right up behind George from lap 40 on the world's longest F1 track. So you're thinking there's no way George can defend. He's nursing these tyres home. He's gone to the end. There's no way he can do this. And then Lewis just hung out in like 0.4 second DRS for the rest of the race. Oscar then is rapidly coming up, and now suddenly Oscar's inside Lewis's DRS. And the one thing that maybe prevented an overtake coming was Lewis getting a little bit too feisty on one of the corners where he ran wide and he suddenly dropped back to nearly out of the DRS. I think it was like 0.9 seconds. But it kind of had that, now suddenly he's more worried about Oscar behind him than he is George ahead. And I think that little microcosm of a shift in momentum just prevented us having a last lap or last 2-lap attack from Lewis, I think. On the beginning of 44, also Lewis locked up a little going into turn 1 La Source. And what that meant was he wasn't quite as tight on George going down Eau Rouge and Raidillon. You need to be so close with the shorter DRS on the Kemmel Straight. You got to be picture perfect from La Source on through to make sure you get that to work. He wasn't, and that was the end of the race. I know it's only a lap, but that was his chance, and he locked up a little bit. And George, I mean, before we get into now, the way this all ended, a couple notes, right, of the on-track racing before we get into the off-track weighing. Number one, great job by George. Like, it seemed like he called that strategy. Again, he didn't hear all the team radio. It seemed like he said, hey, the tire deg is high, but it's harder to pass than you think. I'm going to stay out here. Let's give it a one-shot deal here. And we heard afterwards the simulation said pit, he finishes 5th. Stay out, he finishes 5th. So the team's like, you know what? Screw it. You take that path. It's going to be 5th anyway. And it obviously wasn't. Good for him. Good driving. He didn't overdrive the car, which we've seen him do at the end of races when he's trying to get a win. I thought did a great job, personally. I love the fact the top 3 cars finished 1.1 second apart. I love that. They came around the bus stop chicane, and they're all right there. And I'm like, awesome. Oh my God, Formula One is going to summer break on a high. And then as I'm saying that, you got Charles coming around right away, and Max is right behind him. And Max he's pushing so hard on that pedal, he's almost Flintstoning that car. He's hoping to get a little extra speed. And Lando's right behind him, and Lando's not done well historically at Spa. We'll talk about that in the SAP stats. I was watching this, and I just said this was a hell of a race. I watched the podium, even if the cooldown room sucked. I loved the podium. I thought it was great. I left this race on an absolute high. Agree. 100% agree with everything you just said, which is something I very rarely say. So, I'm sorry, Brian.
That's all right, brother.
But Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely brilliant. But then slowly but surely the news starts to break after we've all come down off the high of the podium, and I'm off soaring up trees in my backyard and waiting, thinking about how we're going to talk about the race on the pod. And it kind of goes through my head as I'm kind of thinking what we're going to talk about. And then suddenly, friend of the show, Rob Reed, comes through and says, how did Mercedes screw that up? He didn't use the word screw, but it's a family-friendly show. And I went back to him. Actually, he didn't. He put MB, and I'm thinking, whose initials are MB? What's he on about?
When you said, "What did Mercedes
and then I went
do?"
back
Now
and
I'm looking too. I'm like, thanks, Rob.
So
Reed. I didn't
back
know this either.
When I went back and said MB, who do you mean by MB? You can't mean Mercedes-Benz. How did they screw it up? They got a 1-2. And then I thought, well, no, Rob can't. There isn't a driver with the initials MB. So I go and Google it. I'm straight onto Google.
I thought Martin Brundle
suddenly,
at first. I swear to God, when I saw Martin Brundle, I'm like, what did Mercedes do?
And then I go on there and I see the breaking news that George's car is found to be 1.5 kilos underweight and he's most likely going to get disqualified. I'm like, oh my gosh. And you wrote in here, 1.5 kilos or 3.3 pounds, that's a lot.
It is.
Now, if you divide that by 4, that's 375 grams per tyre. And Hells Haha from Threads showed a picture of marbles collected at Silverstone.
Yes.
Holding them in the hand and big chunks of marble, right? And actually, it discards a lot of tyre and it's a lot of weight. 375 grams of tyre isn't a lot. And there's no in-lap at Spa. They come over the finishing line, they go around the corner and they're almost straight in.
Pull in the backside of the pits. Yep.
Exactly. So there's no chance to go around and, as they say, drive on the dirty side of the track to pick up all the extra. Because you hear them on the engineer saying, like,
correct,
pick up, remember pick up, remember pick up.
And drivers do that. Like, let's be abundantly clear. That is a common practice, especially at races with no safety car, where you were at full throttle the whole race, or at least, using full power the whole race, as opposed to tootling at 40% on a VSC or behind a safety car even slower. So yes, they do that a lot because there's a question on where their fuel will be and how close it'll be. And I know the weight of the car, 798 kilos, is the minimum weight without fuel. I understand that. But the tire pickup makes a difference there. And they drive around picking up those marbles just to be safe. And like, I don't know the last time a car's had the tank so completely drained from a full tank. It's almost more like if you're close, they'll check. Sebastian Vettel and Baku, I remember that distinctly at Aston Martin because they'd also had a long race, and he actually stopped the car right after the race because he didn't think he had enough gas, where it was going to signify the weight issue, and they did, and he was disqualified from second. So I didn't think of any of this, like as they pitted, like you say, and we see the news, I'm like, oh my God.
I know, so let's have our sliding doors moment and flash all the way back into whenever it was, whatever lap it was when George went, I think I can do this, and they came back and they confirmed. So just to confirm, you're staying out. He said, yes, I'm staying out. That moment right there, I was following Blake, or Break F1 as he is known on Twitter and has been on the show, ex-race engineer. I was following him and his analysis of this, of like, look, someone has not thought of the consequences at that point and run a calculation to go, okay, what's the weight? No one's thought. They've just gone, well, George is going to, yes,
clear, it's the tire weight.
Exactly.
Correct.
No one's kind of thought, if George stays out, what will the impact be on the weight of the car? Just no one's had that. Nobody in the entire team. And he said it sucks. It's no one's individual fault. It's just happened because they probably flipped to a strategy they weren't planning out. George has come out of nowhere and gone, I can make this work. And they've gone, oh, go on then.
And you have to remember, there's no in-lap. Because, again, if he'd gone around a full lap of Spa and driven in the marbles, Dan, Engine Mode 11, who has not been on the pod, but is a friend of Break, he thought, in his experience in F1, 3 pounds, like you say, divided by 4 tires, that's not a ton of weight to get. It's a lot. But if you're really driving over those marbles, your tires are hot, you're picking up all that rubber, you might make it. And so, again, to your point and to the point that Break made, not only did they not think about the tire difference during the one-stopper, I'm also guessing they didn't remember quickly that Spa doesn't have an in-lap, because it's one of the only tracks I can think of that does that.
It might be the only one. I'm sure somebody would correct us, but I think it's almost the only one that doesn't. So that's just pure bad luck. On one hand, it is a bit of a failing on the team that no one thought about it, but none of us thought about it sitting there. But we're not paid to be professional engineers at racetracks. But
not with the amount of Cheetos I eat during a race.
Your fingers, I imagine, to be like tires picking up marbles at the end of a race. Like, so if you want to visualize a tire,
so it's even grosser.
Yeah, if you want to visualize what a tire looks like after it's picked up all that dirty rubber, imagine Brian's big hand going into a bag of Cheetos and get Cheeto dust all over his fingers. That's a tire with marbles on it.
Breakfast of champions.
Right, and here's my gripe with F1 and its rules. I've got no problem that George was disqualified. Rules are rules. Didn't come in over the minimum weight, disqualified. What does grind my gears, as the saying goes, is doing these assessments after the podium has already been conducted. Lewis has just been denied standing on the top step and winning a race because he's won it. He has won this race and gets the 25 points. But he was already annoyed that he didn't win the race on the track and has probably already left the circuit and on his way to his summer break by the time someone's phoned him and gone, "Oh, good job, you won that race, Lewis." I mean...
And he's probably like, fax me the trophy. I'm out of here, man. Summer break.
Yeah, so he gets denied that moment. And given that the drivers have to go and stand on the weighing scales with their helmet the moment they get out of the car to make sure that their weight is captured, why can't the cars be like weighed and done instantly while they're sitting in the cool-down room?
I don't know. There's
surely
a lot of
it can be done quicker.
Because it's not just weighing, too, right? They check planks. They look underneath certain cars. They do extra scrutineering on a handful. I mean, I get your point, but I think this is one of those...
I think there are certain things you could do very quickly to all of the podium
check all
cars
the fuels,
to make sure that the right
make sure
person...
everyone has enough fuel, make sure everyone has enough weight, make sure the plane... I mean, that's a lot of checking.
You reckon? I mean...
Yeah, I do. I mean, we'd be waiting 30 minutes for the podium to start. By then, people would have flipped off ESPN and gone back to watching the Olympic 3 a.m. mixed hopscotch.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, that's my point. I agree with you. I would love to see it not happen this way, but it's happened this way forever. There's a lot of checks that happen. Can I just do one sort of like little conspiracy theory type thing here? So every race weekend, the technical delegates have documents that they come out with. Document 42 is the one that Joe Bauer published that highlighted the weight of George's car at 796.5 versus 798. They then summoned the team to go check it out, and the document that disqualified George and gave Lewis the win, number 44.
I like the meme that showed Lewis either... I can't remember if he was scooting away from the track, but it said Lewis spotted leaving the track at pace with 1.5 kilo of George's car under his arm.
Oh, man. Anyway, so I know George lost the win, which is sad. Lewis gains it. This actually does save Checo in the overall driver standings because he had fallen to 8th in the driver standings.
It harms Red Bull.
It does.
Because now Piastri gets a slightly bigger margin over Max. I think it's only 2 points or 1 point even.
Second to third is a bigger delta than Max's 6th to 5th.
Correct. And Max going up, hit the delta between him and Lando stays the same at 2 points, I think, for where they finished. That helps out.
Checo would fall into 8th because of George's points. George is now still in 8th, and Checo's in 7th. So he hangs on to 7th in the driver standing, so a little help. What a weekend there. I will say this. I loved it. Let's just close this. I love the fact that the shorter DRS, the hot day that no one had planned for because of the rain and the weather, the tire deg, which was higher than people gave credit for, but the mix of these things with it created a track position situation that George took advantage of, and we had this wild finish because of people on different strategies, different approaches to the tires, different approaches to everything, and DRS wasn't as powerful. I thought it was great. It was a heck of a race.
I thought DRS was perfect, and I think if this convergence of teams carries on going for the rest of the season, there's nothing to suggest that anybody will get too far ahead next year. So 25 could be an absolute banger of a season because what you've basically got is Red Bull getting caught by everybody. It was shown today. This was a track that Max loves and like I said, could basically start on the moon and still win the race last year. But we've got McLaren fast. We've got Mercedes unlocking some potential. Ferrari had a good race week this week. I mean, the top 4 teams all did really, really well this week. And like you say, the track conditions and everything just played out to an absolute, I think, banger of a race. We had not huge amounts of overtakes, but the overtakes we had were earned and skillful rather than just DRS kind of push to pass type things. So I'm all ready to do King of the Pits and the Pits, Brian, because I'm on a high. I enjoyed it.
All right. Well, let's start with the King of the Pits because I've already previewed a little bit of
You're the King of the Pits.
All right, Rob, you go first. Who is your king this week?
quite controversial, being as he
boy.
doesn't actually end up winning the race.
You can give it to
But
George?
I'm still going to give it to George
I
for
agree.
making the call, because that was absolutely brilliant. Actually, for having I know we didn't hear all of the radio messages, but from the radio messages we were allowed to hear, it really clearly made it sound like George's call. When he was interviewed straight after, he took none of the credit for it and said to everybody it was the team that had great team, great strategy, and he was just the tire whisperer. I'm so disappointed that my album art will never be used now, because I'd got an AI image of George leaning against a giant tire. You know how like horse whisperers like put their heads against a horse and just kind of smooth the horse's head? I had George leaning against a giant tire, just kind of gently stroking it, because it was going to be the tire whisperer.
Can you get
That's
a
all
picture of
gone
George
now.
and the Mercedes on a scale? And like, anyway, I would agree with
So-
you. Sorry, keep going.
No, go on. I was going to say, guys, George for me, even though he didn't win.
Yeah, and for me, it's also George. I mean, he did a great job defending against Lewis. His teammate, who is one of the most accomplished F1 drivers of all time, often called the GOAT, 7-time world champion, 104 wins before this race, 200 podiums, first person to ever win after 300 Grand Prix. He has, in his home track, there was a straight named after him and some grandstands that I sat in, and he was right behind George. And George did nothing wrong. He didn't put a wheel wrong after that. We've seen George overdrive trying to get positions at the end of races Singapore last year. We've seen it a couple other times. He did a great job. I agree with you. It's George. And then we have to talk about the pits, and I've already done mine, so we'll play the music. Yo, the pits! We all know. Checo, who do you have?
I've just put an email into Andy that does all the music for our show. Just say, can we re-record this so it can just go...
It's Checo.
You're the Checo.
Because God, I've loved him for so long. I've defended him here every time I've named him the pits.
Oh my gosh, I was so with you. I thought this is, even if the rumors were true, that regardless of his performance at Spa, he won't be driving for Red Bull after the break. Let's just say that's true. I honestly thought after his qualifying that he was going to do the big middle finger salute to Red Bull and go, well, I'm going to win this race now, because I thought starting second, cruise up behind Charles, take him by the end of the Kemmel Straight. A Red Bull leading this race then will probably be able to see it out to the end, regardless of how much pace the McLarens have got. I honestly thought this was Checo's redemption. I thought he was going to win it.
Yeah.
And how does he fall? How does he go from second? How does he lose 6 spots and Max take 6? Didn't he? 11th to 5th?
Yeah. Well, yep. Well, Checo technically lost 5 because.
Well, whatever. I mean,
I agree.
Potato, tomato, and all that.
He was
jazz.
by far. What are we talking about? Mattia Binotto again? I thought I didn't hear you. I got confused. I don't understand. He was clearly the slowest of the top 4 teams. It's always been Max and then the other teams, and you just kind of leave Checo out. Now it's so clear. It's just Max, McLaren, and Mercedes. And we'll see if Ferrari can get their fastball back and be back in the second half. But it's now time to hear from Pitlane Paul, and we got his report. I have it here. I have not heard it yet. I cannot wait. But first, his music. We have a nice 5-minute version for Paul. I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, no, Belgium done. Podium's just happened, so we're pretty fresh after what was
so he doesn't
a
know about
very
George
entertaining race. Now, here's one that is very good with DRS because of the length of the, I guess, Eau Rouge, then the Kemmel Straight, and, yada, yada. I'm quite sure you guys have spoke about it. But, yeah, as for an actual event, as for an actual race, yeah, it was actually pretty impressive. For all 3 cars to be that close at the end, let's start with Friday, which is Friday. It's apparently Norfolk Day, according to the Sky people. That was exciting. It's Friday. I hate Fridays. I don't know why I bring them up. I just erase it from memory. Saturday, it rained. When it rains here in Belgium, honestly, it looks like it's never, ever going to stop. Like, the clouds so low, it's all in the forest. It's a pretty rough place to be, bizarrely, when it rains. So to wake up this morning and see the blue sky was amazing. Now let's be realistic. Qualifying didn't really throw up any major shocks, even though it was wet. if I want to be really, really, really horrible to people, I suppose we could say Perez was sort of out of place since he, seems to be allergic to doing good qualifying. But fair play to him. I'm genuinely really happy for him. He's a good guy, I know. Look, when someone's going through bad stuff like that,
I feel like Paul's talking
nice
to me
to
at this
see
point.
them
Sorry,
sort
Paul.
of come back a little bit. So, brilliant for him. Actually delighted for him. Okay, the race, he sort of went backwards and didn't really do anything. So, I don't think that the microscope has moved off him. But, yeah. Then, I mean, the race in general, I mean, it seemed really bizarre. Obviously, Max's penalty made it exciting, I guess, but I don't think he'd have won the race anyway, weirdly. So the start was, pole position's actually a real big disadvantage at this race because second place, if you're second going into turn one, you've got a good chance of being P1 at the end of Camel Straight. So
Rob.
It's bizarrely quite nice to not be pole position. So. And that obviously sort of happened with Lewis got an excellent start, ended up second, soon got in the lead, and for all sense of purposes, looked like that was how it was going to be. Then we had the tyre strategies and the fun of that. And, I like tyre strategies. I know, Satman, you love a tyre strategy.
Love 'em, baby.
But it does sort of like leave you a little bit wondering where the hell everyone actually is in terms of the race, because people are on different strategies, so they're in different positions. The undercut's really strong in and then obviously you have George Russell who decided, look, let's stay out for a one stop, which I thought was highly ambitious, considering the pace that you lose on the worn hard tyres. But he made it work. From our side with Valtteri, we had a similar issue to many ways. We boxed at the end, which I don't think was the right decision. It wouldn't have made any difference to us for getting a point, but if there's the way everyone was jostling up front, if there's a coming together and puncture, front wings, safety cars, anything can happen in that scenario. So I think being brave for George was fantastic. Lewis at the end, I mean, he's going to be frustrated. I haven't heard any of his press or any of his media as yet, but I imagine he'll be quite frustrated because I think it was probably one of those which he thought it was going to be pretty straightforward scenario when he came out second place. Russell's doing the one stop, and it was great to see them being able to race. I know we had the controversy last week with McLaren swapping positions, maintain right thing to do. So
Me too.
To see them look, and as they were saying on TV, actually the sensible thing to do, bizarrely, would have been Lewis to go in front and then drag George in the DRS, or, again, maybe argue vice versa, but it was brilliant. And then Oscar catching at the end. I obviously a Mercedes boy, so I'm delighted with the result. I love the result. So yeah, excellent. I'm going to enjoy a really, really well-earned summer break now. We are testing Tuesday, which sucks a little bit, but the long and short of it, that's one hell of a way to go into the break. Holland, totally different circuit. Then we got Monza, sort of a similar-ish sort of circuit. Lots of DRS, lots of drag. Look, if anything can match that race, we're lucky this year, actually, for all the people who were bemoaning, including myself, who thought this year was going to be a little bit naff because everyone's focusing on the cars for the next couple of years, like the 26 cars. I've been proved wrong. I think it's brilliant. Wow, what a race! What a way to go into the summer break. As mentioned, we're staying here until Tuesday. We're testing on Tuesday, which I'm not happy about. I won't lie. I'd rather shut my manhood into a kitchen cupboard drawer several times than do a day testing. But all I want to do is sit on the beach. A can of Stella. Other alcoholic drinks are available. I'd advise you try Stella. And here we go. I guess I'll be on in the break for a bit of a review with the guys. But yeah, I'm rambling now. Cheery bye.
Cheery bye.
Paul's amazing. Paul, you are the man. Thank you for that
Paul might have secured us a sponsorship deal with Stella there to get us to Canada.
Well, or we should just send him a bill. Hey, we're advertising for you. Here's your invoice.
Yeah.
Paul, can't wait to have you on. That was a great report, great review to do. He nailed a lot of the points you had and a couple of mine as well. So obviously the disqualification happened after he'd submitted the report. Should we go to some stats, Rob?
Let's do it.
All right. So because this race was so good, I agree with Paul. It was great. Just one thing before we get in. Well, let's put it in the stats. It was so good. I think we got to go Slap House as our last SAP stats before the break. You can see us dancing right now. We got to get the video back out on YouTube. SAP stats, the Belgian Grand Prix edition, right before the summer break, 2024. Here we go. So this one's off the top of my head, but I think about it. We've had 14 races. We've had 7 winners, right? And we didn't add a new one today. Lewis got his second of the season. But we've had 7, right? Both McLaren boys, both Ferrari boys, both Mercedes boys, and only one Red Bull boy. Correct?
Which one? Yeah, which Red Bull driver?
Was it Checo? Checking?
No.
No. Okay. So the question was asked right after. So the driver that qualified fastest did not get the pole, Max Verstappen, and the driver that finished first did not win the race, George Russell. Has that ever happened before at the same race? And Sean Kelly wrote, I don't think so, but I can't be arsed to look because I'm on holidays now. So anyway, that's a great stat and a great response. Sean Kelly's the man. Another question, when was the last winner to get a DQ? Because I already mentioned Seb at Baku. I think he was second at Baku there. I'm pretty sure it might have been third. But does George now hand the trophy over at the next race like Kimi had to do in Brazil? And so the Discord for Dre Harrison's Motorsport 101, they reckon it's been 30 years. Spa 94 at Michael Schumacher's Warren skid block. So, again, it's rare that a first-place finisher gets DQ'd, and we'll get into more of the DQ in a little bit. But as I already mentioned, Lewis Hamilton's the first driver other than Max to win multiple Grand Prix this season. The last time a driver won multiple Grand Prix was Checo in April of last year. April! And that, by the way, it's the same car Max is driving, just to be clear. Prior to George Russell's DQ, today's result was set to be Mercedes' 60th 1-2 finish in F1. It would only been their second in the last 4 years, the other one being Brazil in 22 with Russell first and then Hamilton. Russell's only podium finish at Spa remains the half-point farce when he was with Williams in 2021. You remember that rain 2 laps behind the safety car, call it a race? That was also when Lewis had the great toilet audio situation. Today's win for Hamilton was his 11th podium finish at Spa. It was his 4th podium finish in the last 5 Grands Prix after no podiums in the first 9 races of the year. So when you talk about Mercedes coming on, if there were a graph for this, it would be very clear. It'd be a hockey stick up. And that's a great stat. Oscar and P2 McLaren were on the podium for the 10th consecutive Grand Prix. But if you remember, Piastri retired in a collision at the first corner of the race last year. McLaren had a rough race last year. And actually, as well, P5, which is where Lando was promoted to, was his best ever finish at Spa from 6 career starts. So McLaren never really had great success at Spa. I'm sure they're pretty tickled with Oscar finishing second. Interestingly, and this is one that I did not see, Ferrari Charles Leclerc took the flag in P4 and Max in P5. They were the same places at Hungary. I was so enthralled with the McLaren situation at Hungary that I forgot about that. And we already mentioned this, the top 3 finishers separated by 1.1 seconds, the closest finish without a safety car intervention since the 2016 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, when Hamilton apparently deliberately backed up the field. I don't remember that. And then Leclerc started from pole, and here's a stat. This is not a Leclerc pole stat, so you can, Ferrari fans and Charles fans, you can feel okay. He took pole, but it was the 6th consecutive race where the pole sitters failed to win, the longest streak since 2009-2010.
Wow.
That's kind of weird, isn't it? Like you would
that
expect
is.
more conversions from pole for people. And then the last couple here, P6 for Carlos dropped him behind Oscar in the Drivers' Championship. I already told you that Sergio was saved from going to 8th by the DQ for George. And here's my last Checo one that I promised. Checo set the fastest lap of the Belgian Grand Prix. They pitted him, and he did it on lap 44, emulating Roberto Moreno in 1991, who was then sacked from his drive following that race in favor of some guy named Michael Schumacher. Do you think this was Checo's last race, Rob?
Oh,
at least last for a Red Bull.
I mean, based on, I can't find the quote now, but I read it quickly before as I was setting up to record this, but Helmut Marko's come out with some scathing remark about Checo, saying that he
Really?
basically... Oh, yeah, it was something like he basically just fell apart in the final stint or something. He's absolutely
Really?
kind of... Yeah, not a glowing endorsement of him at all. So, I don't know. We shall see.
Okay.
But that puts a bow around Spa, which was absolutely fantastic. We now need to shine the spotlight on the dirty side representing the Fantasy League, because I think we have some rather big news about Hungary, don't we,
It
Brian?
looks like it just updated.
Yeah, well, we've got Spa, don't worry, but let's go to Hungary, because you've got to take...
Right.
We need you to stand on the top step, sir.
Shall I? Apparently I was first in Hungary. Spray the champagne.
You weren't just first. You were first by 16 points, which is like a country mile in fantasy.
And I didn't use any
tokens,
tickets, whatever they're called, chips.
You had the foresight to double Oscar. You had George in there as well. McLaren and Mercedes as constructors. I mean, you basically just... I don't know. Was that the perfect score for that week, do you think? Or without chips?
It had to be close.
It's got to be close, that. Well
I mean,
done,
I don't
sir.
want to say that I was once 333rd in the world in this entire game, but it's worth repeating for one more time.
I was just in the sweet spot of bigging you up, and then you have to go and get all smug and start bringing up last time.
Yeah.
And then that just makes me want to come on to this week where I beat you.
Yeah. Oh, what? Okay. That's correct. So I did do pretty well at Hungary. Didn't even think about it. Love it. And then I reran basically the same team, except I put Lando in for Oscar because I took his price rise, and I'm like, oh, now I can get Lando in here, and that didn't work out for me because George got a DQ, Mercedes got a DQ, Lando finished 5th. I had Joe in there because I couldn't afford Yuki anymore. Got a DQ. Is it updated? It looked like it.
Yeah, you had some like 96 points and finished like way down. I thought I'd missed you as I was scrolling down because I didn't have a brilliant week. I decided to try and get a bit fancy, and I was following some of the accounts on the Discord, fantasy Discord thing. And I final fixed Max in. I went Lando and Oscar for qualifying. And then I final fixed Max in because I think Max is going to be like a rocket ship and come up through the field. So I'm going to get the McLaren boys points for qualifying, and then I'm going to bring Max in. Kind of worked okay. I just did the wrong switch. I should have final fixed Max in for Lando rather than Oscar, because if I'd done that, then Max would have inherited my ×2, and I would have had a much better score off Max. So I was kind of middle of the pack. I was about 20-something, 144 points, I think, to your 92.
92, I'm looking. I finished 60th because, as I mentioned already, I had DQs everywhere, not a drop to drink. Yeah, boy, that's rough.
I mean, you really went from hero to zero over the course of 2 weeks, didn't you?
Is this the same guy who finished 333rd in the world a couple years ago? Okay. So this week, it does not say provisional anymore, so we're going with this. F1 Fantasy HQ, Adam, friend of the show, Adam, fantasy expert Adam, finished first. Look at Adam. Merkstappen, Fakri with 218, one behind Adam. Team minimal effort, Lee, rocking it, Lee. Third, 206. Lord William, the first. William got 198, tied with Waystar Royko Busan for 4th place. And then we have Matt with Shui Transmitted Disease, William LRG Motorsport, Manasi F1 Team Forte, and Ryan Signs Sealed Delivered in the top 9. We have some ties for 10th, so we'll stop there. But great job by everybody. However, I'm now going to switch over for, as Rob said, the all-important...
Have you got a drum roll sound effect? You haven't, have you?
I don't, but we could report from the rumor.
We could do the cheering one once you announce, and then...
All right, so I'll get the cheery one set up. The winner of the T-shirt by only 6 points... 3,066 points. Merkstappen, Fakri with 3,066 points. 6 points ahead of Busan, Waystar Royko. 6 points. That is so close. Congratulations, Fakri. We will send out a email, or send us an email, because we actually have no information on you because of the F1 game. So send us an email, dirtysideofthetrack@gmail.com. Or on Twitter, or on Threads, or on Insta, or on Facebook, or on MySpace, or whatever you like. Hit us up, and we will send you a T-shirt from the Dirty Side. But good job. We already mentioned Busan, 3,060 right behind. It was close. 30.52 for Usama, Phoenix, AMG. Look at this, 30.48. All these people. Niku, Kimi Hakkinen, all these teams we talked about. Andy Taylor. Andy Tails I win, 30-14. Now a little delta there, Andy, if I'm being honest. Not quite as tight. You can do better. Downforce won. Michael Cronje. Michael's an expert at this kind of stuff, like Andy. And then, again, a couple drops. Fariz, Petronas RT. Mike yanked the mic. Michael, great job, man, finishing 8th. And then the last 2 in the top 10, Fantasy HQ Adam and San Gaucho F1 Manuel. Great job to all you guys for finishing in the top 10 in the first half. T-shirt, though, for Merck Stappen.
Nice. Yeah, congratulations. Yeah, and do you know what? By this point last year, maybe even earlier last year, I completely lost interest in fantasy because it was just the template. It was Max. It was whatever. It was just dull, 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 dull. I'm loving this year. I'm just loving the variety. I am not very good at it, but I'm just enjoying the fact that at least you can have different driver setups. Like, it was a real decision this week is, do I bring Max back in? And it was like, that just wasn't a thing last year. That was just a gimme that everybody had to have Max, and it's what could you do with the rest of it? So
I was so excited that George won that I did not get into the Red Bull camp because Checo didn't do that great. He was 8th. Max did fine. And everyone who put in Max or Red Bull, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I played it right. And then they DQ George, and I go, oh, geez, Louise. I got Joe
and I'm not sure
George.
how. I think I get Oscar back next time round because the final fix undoes itself.
I don't even know how final fix works, if I'm being totally honest. We'll have to ask.
You're allowed to make one change between quali and race.
We should have Rob's volunteered to come on Fantasy Hub this break. We should have him on, and he can explain.
Come on and give strategy
Please.
guides for the second half of the season. So.
Yes.
I'm talking that we've got a few people lined up. We haven't got anything firm for next week, but we've got a number of folk that want to come on. I know Hells from Threads wants to come on. We'll have Pitlane Paul to do a mid-season review. We've got some other folk that we're lining up. Also, a shout out to anybody that's been on and done the 100 seconds of DRS but wants to come back on and maybe take on the quiz. I'm going to start publishing the leaderboard soon. I don't even remember who's top. It might still be Andy. Or did Terry go top? Can't remember who went top. I will publish the leaderboard, and then people can come on and kind of just, we won't do the DRS again with you if you've already done it before, but we can do the Who Wants to Be a Dirty Sider quiz.
That'd be awesome. I'm excited. We'll get into that a lot more in the second half. Man, the first half was great. I know we'll do a full review, but as we close Spa, as we close this week, Rob, this has been one of the best seasons in a long time, right?
I put on Threads today that for every F1 podcaster out there that had to try to make best of the rest conversations every single race last season, all of us unanimously thank you, F124, for being absolutely brilliant so far. It hasn't taken any effort to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because it's just been brilliant.
We are completely against gatekeeping here. I don't care how you joined F1. I don't care what you like about it. But I will say this. If you're not enjoying this season, maybe you're not an F1 fan. That'll be my own
Maybe you need to tune into the Olympic hopscotch instead.
Yeah, 3 a.m. mixed doubles. All right. So, yeah, this was a great race. We've had a few in a row. I feel like every other one has been a banger, and the ones in between are great, too. Oh, fantastic. I hope you enjoyed Spa. I hope you enjoyed the chaos and the drama. I hope you enjoyed listening to Rob and I debate what was a great race and then a crazy ending. We can't wait to talk to you in a week's time. The summer break is here, but we don't stop on the dirty side. We can't wait to talk to you guys pretty soon. Be well. Have a great week, everybody.